You know, if I'm sharing the message, everyone was behind me, and some of those people went against everything I was doing, and didn't even want to support the work anymore, because I started mentioning theology. Guys, I thought I would share some little insight with you all that I have in my life. And I think it's important, especially in the discussion of God and the theologies of God, the belief systems of God, and versus the experience of having God in every single moment. You know, and Jesus, the Bible tells you, pray unceasingly. It tells you that. Well, you're not going to walk around saying the Lord's Prayer all day. And likewise, the disciples did ask Jesus, you know, tell us how to pray. So clearly, prior to that, how were they praying? And it was different. It's a mindful prayer. It's being conscious and mindful of every action. And that is the origin of the word sin, is to do actions that are not conscious and mindful. And thus you can do actions that create moral harm to other beings, and thus you are acting out of sin. So you're not acting consciously in the present moment. Now, I think this is so important because praying unceasingly is something not many people do, and I struggle with it a lot, but it's a skill that I had, and I lost because of the busyness of life. You know, the influence of the physical necessity of running and building the charity definitely pulled me away from that. Now, what I did learn is when I initially came to Tanzania, I was very much a blank canvas. And all that was happening to me was I had a message roaring in my heart, and that was a message of equality and justice and love and sharing. And this came about through practicing spiritual practices that were advised by people like Yeshua or Jesus and the Buddha as well. But I pursued fasting more than anything, and meditation and prayer within there, and building a relationship with God by being mindful. And I spent years walking around in nature, like literally just walking around in nature on my own, forests, valleys, beaches, never hardly talking to human beings except maybe to interact when I went to buy, or even just to get the food delivered from the supermarket from the guy. There was very little, very, very little of me that could identify as something. So I didn't have these labels. I didn't even have friendships to identify as who I was. I went into a complete state of unattachment, which makes you become extremely attached to God in the present moment. And when I came to Tanzania, the message in my heart was not Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism. My message was that I had this overwhelming want to share and to help these children. And my whole journey began with that message. I was sitting at my computer, I saw these children suffering in Uganda, and I said someone should do something to help them. And their names were Sam and Esther. You can watch the video still on YouTube, Sam and Esther in Uganda with polio. And I watched it. I wonder if the people who made that video know how it influenced me. It'd be very interesting actually to reach out and ask them. If anyone knows them, very interesting to talk to them and tell them. I would like to know if a video of mine did that, you know. So I watched Sam and Esther, and I heard a voice say, "You're someone." And this began this journey, and I realized that what was the core of what was happening here was I'd offered my life to God recently to that, saw these children, desired to help them, and God got behind that desire. Or perhaps even the desire belonged to God and not me. Anyway, you know, the desires of my heart are God's here. I didn't plan to come to Tanzania, He brought me here. So everything I've desired since, like the children's village, is all Him. So I got here and I shared only the message of sharing, love, compassion. I rarely mentioned God. I used the word the universe a lot when I was doing my posts. And I did that because I didn't want to, and at the time, I am still a guy who has his beliefs, and I didn't have a religion. I didn't have one when I came here. And I shared the message of love and sharing, and everybody got behind me. Now likewise, other persons in history, when they share that message, people get behind the message, you know, Jesus and so on and so forth. It's only, and at the time it's happening, people are behind the message or opposed to the message. And that's exactly what goes on today. Either people are behind the message of love, caring and sharing, or they are opposed to it and they say, that won't save you, you know, which is the sort of attitude I get from a lot of people who are Christian. Your works won't save you. I don't want my works to save me. I know God. I'm not trying to save myself. I'm trying to help the kids. You know, and I don't have any absence of God in my life whatsoever. My relationship with God is there. I'm not perfect, you know. I'm sure I could be better in the eyes of God. But I don't feel I'm looking for God, and I don't feel I'm seeking salvation. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's a worry for yourself, etc. But, like I say, God brought me here not with that. He brought me here with desire for helping these kids. Now, here's the rub. During the time that I was sharing these videos and not talking about theology, not talking about labels, I didn't mention Jesus, God, Christianity, Buddhism, I just spoke a message of sharing. Everyone got behind me. And still to this day, when I pray, God will answer prayers in country and internationally with people of all different faiths, even if I advertise what we have as a need or not. So even if I don't advertise the need and pray, God will send all different faiths to answer our prayers, always. So that leaves me in a very beautiful position of understanding with regards to God, and perhaps the way that he sees the heart of man more than he sees the theology of man, you know, the belief of man. And this is represented clearly, my hair's annoying the life out of me, represented clearly by the Good Samaritan. And I'm grateful someone commented the other day, because it's such an important message. Wouldn't it be great if we could just build a religion based around the principles of the Good Samaritan? And what I mean by that is, you know, quite simply, in the eyes of God, in Christianity, the Good Samaritan was right in the eyes of God. He wasn't Christian, he wasn't Jewish, he wasn't, you know, doing any of the Abrahamic faiths. He was Samaritan. Yet his heart was good and it was pure, and he did the right thing. Now, if when I'm sharing my message, everybody's behind it, but then all of a sudden, as soon as I add in the inner workings of John, my theology, what worked for me personally, and I start using theology, books, labels, religions, all of a sudden people who have followed and believed in the message started to attack. Even people who supported us in a big way attacked me and said all sorts of things, because they're saying that I'm an antichrist and things like this, or insinuating it, because I wouldn't stick. They presumed, because of how I was living, that I was just straight line Christian like them, because I serve the message of Jesus Christ in what I do. But when I add in and say, oh, actually, because I've read other theologies around the planet, I see there's a lot of people like that, and can actually be born of these religious texts in that manner of consciousness, like a different person, you know. A baptized person must be different. There must be a change in the person to be able to adhere to those rules. And it happens across the world. All different people transform and change like that. And it's just to say, like, how wonderful a world it would be if we focused more on the Good Samaritan side of our faith. And I'm not pushing any other faith to one side. It's just to give some focus and some clarity, and just to say, you know, if I'm sharing the message, everyone was behind me, and some of those people went against everything I was doing and didn't even want to support the work anymore, because I started mentioning theology. Now, one last thing is, that's interesting, because it tends to be that when you mention theology, you challenge belief, and belief is an egoic attachment. You attach to belief with ego. That's why when people want to debate who's got the right belief, I mean, it's locking heads. It's pure going to always drag the ego into the debate. And it's going to be, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right, you're wrong. And I don't see the benefit or the growth for humanity in doing that. I really don't. If someone believes you to be right or wrong, then that's how it is. You're not going to be able to necessarily bang heads with someone who's devoutly against your views and change it, you know. And that's what I notice. It's because we live in a space of love when the message of love is there, And then all of a sudden someone challenges theology, and for all the same message and same person and the same love is present, the carnal mind comes in, the ego comes in and says, hey, that's contrary to my belief. And then the energy changes, because all of the negative energies are born out of the carnal mind. They're never born out of that place of love and service. So, and I just wanted to share that, because that's my experience and my suggestion, that we always approach, when we look at a person to make a decision about what they are like, spiritually, etc. We approach them and ask, are they right in the eyes of God? And if you wonder if they're right in the eyes of God, then look to the story of the Good Samaritan if you're a Christian. If you don't, read it and find out what I mean. That the Good Samaritan was right in the eyes of God, for all he didn't follow the same religion as what the Bible would have suggested at the time, or the consensus at the time would have suggested was the right faith and religion for that God. So, God is not absent from the lives of people who don't adhere to the same theology as other people. The Bible tells you that, otherwise the Good Samaritan wouldn't have been right in the eyes of God. So, God bless, guys. Love you all.